lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and I'm back talking more CrossGen. And this is the last of the initial launch of 4 titles that started CrossGen Comics in 2000 and started what I believe was one of the greatest, not just runs for comic books, but like chunk of time for an indie publisher. So much great content was coming out, so much great talent was a part of it and then also came out of it. So I'm very excited to, get into Meridian by Barbara Kesel, Joshua Middleton, Dexter Vines, and Michael Ataya. But before I do that, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's already subscribed to the channel. We appreciate all the views, the likes, the comments. And if you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and check out some of the other dope content on the channel. We got interviews, artist editions, hardcovers, single issues, indie creators, big name creators, all that good stuff. So hit that subscribe button, and now let's get into Meridian. This was the one title that I didn't get from the beginning. And I didn't get all of them from the beginning. I think I came in a little late on a couple of them and then had to go back and get some of the earlier issues. Meridian was one that I think it was probably well into its first year before I picked up an issue. And boy, did I regret it. It became one of my favorites from the beginning to the end. I feel like Scion was always written by Ron Mars, and then Barbara Kesel always wrote Meridian. And that's not true for all the books. They went through different writers from the initial launches. They didn't always stay the same. But those 2 titles kept their at least not creative team, but the writers stayed from. And I believe I've heard Barbara mention that this is one of her favorite comic book titles that she's ever worked on, and it shows. This was such a beautiful book, and mentioned it before. We got 2 eyes. They're talking about how they're going to create the sigil bearer. I've already mentioned it in the other episodes, so I won't get too into it. We don't know who they are, and then they talk. Now they come into the following 2 pages, and we get to see the world that we're going to be introduced to. And the world itself is a thing of rare beauty ravaged by the changes of time. It says, right? It has survived one cataclysm, and its people thrive in the resulting sky cities, which is really cool. I love the design of this. Not gonna do just one sigil bearer this time. It would disrupt the balance that they say is on this planet, and so they're gonna do 2 siblings this time. And again, they don't give any direction. They just simply give those sigils away, and that's all that happens, right? And so we see these flying ships, and we're introduced instantly to Sephie. And she's making a note of Catador doesn't usually send so many, and that she's from Meridian, which is their island. Catador is the neighboring island that's run by her uncle. This is a Joshua Middleton that, like, you're seeing an early style here. Like, he has definitely evolved way past what we're seeing here. This is his first comic book work. And it's cool to go back and see creators, after they've been in the business for a long time and they've, kind of sharpened and honed their skills. But I just love this. I think this is a book that would do so well in the current market. This is like the perfect, like, YA title. It has a little bit of like that dark element to it because of her uncle, which we'll see, but it's just so much fun. And I love how adventurous Sephie is. She's so cool. She's jumping across roofs, and she's just so innocent, and she comes into the room and tells her dad she's ready to go to see her uncle, who has now come to Meridian. So now we're seeing Minister of Catador, Ilahn, is here. And Turos, Sephie's dad, is, he's very cordial and very warm and boisterous, but not the uncle. You can see it from his face. He's a dick. And so, they're talking some, not necessarily what I call it politics, but it's business, right? A little bit of politics, because they're talking about, joining their islands for monetary reasons and consolidating power. Meridian is so wealthy. Why don't you raise these hovels and build something magnificent? And no, he likes the simplicity of it, right? As they're talking, and Turos is kind of against Ilahn, this bird comes, orange eyes, and a bright light shines, and we see it burned through Ilahn's throat and burned through Turos's chest, and they're both left with sigil marks. And you can kind of see where this leans more towards the red, this leans more towards the yellow. But because Turos had already had health issues, it kills him. Because he's so weak and his heart was weak, he just makes mention, to Sephie, the light. And she comes in close, and as she leans on her dad's chest, you can see the glow shining on her head, and she's able to see her dad's spirit leave, and then the sigil goes to her head. And this is where we're going to see a little bit of the intrigue. Ilahn talks to this Rigor guy, and he's like, I need you to deliver a message. When it's done, come see me. I'll be in Turos' study. And then, again, so now we see his just lean so heavy into red. Significant because he is definitely a darker, more evil character, and he will be throughout. He was planning this all along for Turos to die. He's been poisoning him. He had a spy in Meridian, and now he's sending that same spy to go kill Sephie, but he's blinded by the power of her sigil because it flashes as she wakes up and realizes somebody's there. And as he's about to stab her, we see Ilahn come and save her. So why did he do that? And then, we're going to see that he basically did it because he wanted her to trust him. So it was all set up. And in turn, he's also getting rid of the spy. We see his powers destroy the lantern as he holds it over, and it lights this room on fire, and he takes Sephie with him back to Catador. And he's, tomorrow we begin to plot Meridian's course together. So Sephie, as I wouldn't call her naive, but she's very trusting of her uncle. She doesn't see that he's doing something wrong. As we get through these 6 issues, we're going to see that, just how much of a piece of shit that guy really is, And so, this is Tad. This is, kind of the crush, the love interest, I would say, of Sephie. We don't really see it played out for a little while, but he's an important character to watch throughout. And then we see as she's coming, she sees how dark Catador is compared to Meridian, and she just wants to go home. And he's like, you can't trust anybody there. You have to stay here with me. It's a responsible thing to do. And he also has instructed her to cover her head. He's covering his neck, doesn't want anybody to see these sigils. Get a good feel of how adventurous Tad is, and it kind of has that same vibe of everybody from Meridian. There's a swashbuckling kind of energy to this book. I love Barbara's writing, so good, and you can just tell from issue 1 on how much she really loves these characters and is just having a blast. And I love that we're getting, the narration by Sephie. I didn't mention that in issue 1, but she's narrating this as if she's talking about the past. So she's been through all this, and we're getting her kind of almost reminiscing. And I feel like we never got to see that come to fruition because all the CrossGen books were kind of, prematurely ended because the company shut down, which I've mentioned in other videos. I still hold out hope that maybe we'll see a return someday. So now we meet this lady who was in CrossGen Chronicles #1. She's got the orange eyes, and she knows the truth about the sigils. And so now Ilahn's taken aback by her, and he brings her to his study. And we see, Sephie's not going to be kept trapped. Gets rid of these people, gets rid of these handmaidens, and she's going to try to make her escape into the city to kind of explore and see what her new home is entailing. Again, we see the red of Ilahn's powers, and we see how really loveless and almost sad that Catador is. And then we get this, she had a secret, and we see the glow of yellow with her, the glow of red with him. MIddleton killed it on this. I love how they colored this book. They use really bright colors and then really dark tones when it comes to Catador, and you can see the contrast of it here. And then we're going to see the people of Meridian. What are they going to do? They're going to have to leave their island behind because of Catador sending its forces to kind of, keep the peace. But in reality, they're really going to take over. And it's all political for him. It's all, monetary. He's doing it for a reason. We see how heartless he is with this guy that, he feels cheated him getting supplies from. Meet Tad's dad as they, are bombarded by the forces of Catador. We see Sephie now meet this little old lady. And she also says, why don't you ask him why your uncle wears a portrait of your mother's likeness close to him? So she questions him, and then we see the truth, right? He was in love with Sephie's mom and believes his brother stole her from him. So he's always hated his brother for that, right? And he's like, she should have been mine, Meridian should have been mine, and you should have been. And this is where we see, he loses it, man. He grabs her by the neck and then realizes, oh my God, what did I do? And she said, we're not alike. I'm nothing like you and never will be. I'm not staying here. I'm going home. And she grabs a ship and makes her way. And this is something I love too about these flying ships. I love, it's like Pirates of the Air almost. Very cool. This issue is basically Sephie on the run, and as well as the people of Meridian on the run. So get some cool scenes here of her flying the ship. We see again the descent of Ilahn as he's willing to, just go further and further into the darkness. You meet this mysterious woman who will play a part. She's looking for Ilahn. For what reason? We'll find out. Not in these first 6 issues. You'll see later. Just a really great, Sephie on the run. They shoot these spears at her ship, and what happens? They're supposed to take her alive, but because they all hit at once, it shakes her out, and she falls to her demise. I love this single panel. Really dope. And then we're going to see what happens to Sephie, as Ilahn is talking to the different cities. We get Turble, Violent, Ring City, Nescoin, and, talking about how she's likely headed home, and Ilahn has put out the word she needs to be brought back to him. The coloring on here is phenomenal. Paul Mounts coming into color, definitely a different vibe from the previous issues. Just so good. And she lands in this like dead land, like the trees are all dying, the grass and everything, and she just collapses right into the ground. And so now this guy has to tell Ilahn that she's dead, but he didn't want to be the one to drop that bad news just yet. So we see that there's a hidden ship in an area under the island that Turos made sure so that if they ever had to make a quick escape, get a cool little interaction with Jad and his dad, and Mira, who he at one point said, "You're not my mother," the step kid, right? But he didn't realize his dad was having a relationship with her, and so a lot of those cool like family dynamics in here, a lot of great character relationships, and Barbara juggles them also very well in here. And like, again, each person has such a distinct personality. And so now she's, this mysterious woman wants to meet with Ilahn and wants an appointment. She gets turned away. Ilahn showing his force of power for when people disappoint him. And then finally we get back to Sephie as the people of Meridian make their escape, and we see that the land that she was around has all grown. A lush garden. Trees have come back to life. Flowers, everything blooming. And she's woken up by this woman, this mysterious woman, and she takes her to a place where she can rest. And then we see this is really what signifies what Sephie's powers are and how she can give life to something. Whereas Ilahn destroys, builds up. And now she's going to go home. And it says it right here. I love the narration here. She was still reeling from the shock of her strange and unexpected survival. She fell from the sky and was alive. It was much later when I learned how much more I'd done and how much more I could do. And now she gets taken to Acacia, another land. This is not an island. This is on the ground. And, again, everything, the land has been poisoned. A lot of things just, continue to kind of wither away. And she's going to hide out there. And we see Jad going to Catador trying to save Sephie from there, not realizing that she's gone. And then we meet Risha Teramu of Arud, who comes to Ilahn and kind of wants to team up with him. And we see the old lady. She's like, two winds spin together to make a fearful storm. Two fates entwine into one future. The Minister of Catador hides the loss of an heir with a matching soul. When you find out, when I found out who she was, oh man, such a great mystery that led up. You don't really get the inklings of what's going to happen. Now we see the hero in Sephie as she goes to save this little boy, her powers, how she kind of heals the wood and makes it strong again. So this is just a great issue. the people of Acacia trying to decide what to do with her, and realizing like they could go one of two ways. They could keep her, and she could help them, or if they contact Catador, then they would also get him as an ally. And we end with Sephie, staring off into the sunset, stating, she's a living symbol of her promise to Meridian, or this sunset has become a living symbol of her promise to Meridian. Ilahn of Catador would not destroy her island. It's time for her to go home and start a war. Just so good. And that caps off Meridian 1 through 6, the beginning of one of my favorite CrossGen titles, and the last of the 4 launch titles. So if you haven't checked out the rest of the CrossGen videos, please do so. I've been mentioning, that Marvel owns the rights to CrossGen. They haven't done shit with it, with the exception of, they tried to relaunch a couple titles, and they changed what made the CrossGen book special, in my opinion. And that was years ago. And then they just released one shot reprinting 4 issue number 1s, and that came out like about a year ago. And now they've released the Sigil Omnibus. Is there going to be more? I don't know. I would love new content. I would love to see them finish off some of these runs. Just cap them off. Give them the endings they deserve. Or produce new content. But don't try to change what made this publisher special and the comic special, because they're a blast to read. I highly recommend it. Go pick up any CrossGen book and you'll be completely satisfied. And while you're at it, make sure you like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you're notified every time a new vid drops. And on that note, I'm out.